exposing the brutal truth behind Rome's grand marble arches. What if your entire existence belonged to someone else? Welcome to the world of the Roman slave. You've heard of gladiators and galleys, but most Roman slaves lived a different kind of misery, hidden in kitchens, fields, and crowded city alleys. Picture yourself as a child, sold at a bustling market, your fate decided by a stranger's coin. Each day, you're ordered to fetch water, grind wheat, scrub floors. Always watched, always wary. Punishment could come at any time, for any reason. But hope? It flickered in secret friendships, stolen moments of laughter, and dreams of freedom. What would you do if every sunrise meant survival, not adventure? Empires are built on stories like these, the stories history tried to forget. Would you have endured?
Have you ever wondered what lies beneath the surface of greatness? Imagine a child, maybe no older than 10, lowered into a pitch-black hole in the earth. He will spend the rest of his short life there, deep underground, chipping away at rock in suffocating heat. He will likely never see the sun again. This wasn't a scene from some dark fantasy. This was the reality for thousands of people in ancient Athens. It was the terrible secret that powered the world's first democracy, the city that gave us philosophy, theater, and the very idea of rule by the people was built on a foundation of unimaginable suffering. This is the story of that foundation. We often picture ancient Athens as a city bathed in golden sunlight. We think of wise philosophers like Socrates and Plato discussing justice in the bustling agora. We imagine citizens gathering on the Pnyx hill, raising their hands to vote on the laws that would govern their lives. It was a place of stunning innovation and intellectual bravery. The Parthenon, a marvel of architecture, stood proudly on the Acropolis, a symbol of Athenian power and devotion. Athens was, in many ways, the birthplace of the Western world as we know it. But every gleaming temple and every democratic vote cast a long, dark shadow. That shadow stretched for miles deep into the earth. This shadow was cast by the silver mines of Laurion, a hilly region about 50 kilometers southeast of the city. These were not just any mines. They were the engine of Athens. The silver extracted from their depths was the lifeblood of the city-state. It paid for the magnificent buildings that still inspire awe today. It paid the salaries of citizens who served on juries or in public office, allowing even the poor to participate in democracy. Most importantly, it paid for the mighty Athenian navy, the fleet of warships that made Athens a dominant power in the ancient Mediterranean. Without Laurion's silver, there would be no Athenian golden age. The contrast is stark, almost too difficult to comprehend. Above ground, a society celebrated freedom, debate, and the power of the individual citizen. It was a world of art, poetry, and political discourse. But just a day's walk away, another world existed. It was a subterranean realm of darkness, despair, and brutal exploitation. Here, the ideals of democracy meant nothing. Freedom was a distant, impossible dream. The story of Athens is not just one of light and glory. It is a tale of two deeply connected worlds: the shining city on the hill and the dark, hellish pits that paid for its brilliance. Understanding Athens means understanding both. Picture yourself as an Athenian citizen in the 5th century BC. Your name is Lycomedes, a potter with a small workshop near the city gates. Each morning, you walk through the vibrant streets, past merchants selling figs and olives, past stonemasons heading to work on a new temple. You feel a deep sense of pride. This is your city. You are not a subject ruled by a king or a tyrant. You are a participant in its governance. You have a voice. On assembly days, you can climb the Pnyx hill with your fellow citizens. There, you can listen to great orators like Pericles, and debate the most important issues of the day. Your life is woven into the very fabric of this democracy. When there is a trial, you might be selected by lot to serve on a jury. You and hundreds of your peers will listen to the arguments and deliver a verdict. You are paid a small fee for this service, a revolutionary idea. It means that even a man of modest means like you can afford to take a day away from his workshop to participate in the justice system. This is what democratia, power to the people, truly means. It is not just a concept, it is a lived, daily experience. It is the freedom to speak, to vote, and to hold your leaders accountable for their actions. This pride extends to the city itself. You look up at the Acropolis, and you don't just see stone and marble. You see a testament to Athenian greatness, a project that you and your fellow citizens voted to fund. The silver that paid for it came from the state-owned mines, and you feel it belongs to all of you. You attend the theater during the great festivals, watching plays by Sophocles or Aristophanes. These are not just entertainment. They are a communal experience, exploring complex themes of war, justice, and human nature. This is a culture that you are actively part of, not one that is simply handed down to you by an elite. In this world, the idea of slavery is not something you question deeply. It is simply a part of life. You see enslaved people working in homes, on farms, and in workshops. Perhaps you even own one or two yourself, to help with the pottery or manage the household. They are a separate class of person, outside the circle of citizenship. You know that many of them are prisoners of war, or were bought from foreign lands. Their labor makes your life easier, freeing up your time to be a citizen. You might not think too much about where they all come from, or the system that brings them here, especially not the ones who disappear into the mines. Now, let us leave the sunlit streets of Athens behind. We travel south to the dusty, barren hills of Lorion. The air here is different. It is thick with the smoke from smelting furnaces and the metallic tang of processed ore. The ground is scarred with thousands of pits and shafts, like wounds in the earth. This is the other Athens. This is where the city's wealth is born, not through debate or art, but through relentless back-breaking toil. There are no philosophers here, no democratic assemblies. There is only the rhythmic clang of hammers against rock and the groans of exhausted men and children. This is the domain of the slave. The mines of Lorion were a vast and complex operation. Wealthy Athenian citizens, the 1% of their day, would lease a section of the mines from the state. They would then buy slaves, sometimes hundreds at a time, to do the actual digging. These were not skilled laborers. They were human tools, bought and sold like cattle. Most were prisoners of war from places like Thrace or Anatolia, men who once had families and lives of their own. Now, their identity was erased. They were simply bodies, valued only for the amount of rock they could break before they collapsed. The mine owners aimed to extract the maximum profit in the shortest time. The conditions inside the mines were horrific, a true vision of hell on earth. The tunnels were often less than a meter high. Adult men had to crawl on their bellies or crouch for hours on end, their bodies contorted into painful positions. The air was thick with dust that filled their lungs, leading to silicosis, a deadly respiratory disease. The only light came from small flickering oil lamps that consumed the precious oxygen and filled the narrow passageways with greasy smoke. Rockfalls were a constant danger, with primitive wooden supports offering little real protection. The tunnels could stretch for hundreds of meters, creating a terrifying, disorienting maze deep underground. For the people forced to work here, there was no escape. They were often branded and wore shackles to prevent them from running away, though there was nowhere to run. Overseers armed with whips patrolled the tunnels, ensuring the pace of work never slowed. The slaves worked in brutal shifts, sometimes for 10 hours straight, with little food or water. The average life expectancy for a mine slave was tragically short. Many were children, their small bodies ideal for squeezing into the narrowest veins of ore. They entered the mines as boys and died there as old men before they even reached the age of 20. This was the hidden engine of the Athenian state. Let us follow the journey of a single piece of silver, from the dark earth to the Athenian treasury. It begins with the raw physical suffering of a slave. Imagine a man named Darius, captured in a battle far from his home. He is shackled and marched to Laurion. His day begins before dawn, when he is forced down a terrifyingly deep vertical shaft, lowered by a simple rope and winch. He lands in a cramped, hot gallery. For the next 10 hours, armed only with a hammer and chisel, he chips away at the hard galena ore. Each swing of the hammer sends jarring vibrations through his aching body. The dust coats his throat and burns his eyes. The work is monotonous and soul-crushing. Darius works alongside hundreds of others, their bodies slick with sweat and grime. The only sound is the endless chipping of metal on stone. If he slows down, a whip will crack nearby, a sharp reminder that he is not a person, but a piece of property. He passes baskets of heavy ore down the line, which are then hauled to the surface by other teams of slaves. He knows nothing of the world above. His universe has shrunk to this dark, suffocating tunnel, the pain in his back, and the gnawing hunger in his stomach. His only hope is for the shift to end, bringing a few hours of restless sleep before it all begins again. Once the ore reaches the surface, the process of extraction continues, and so does the suffering. The rock is crushed into a coarse powder, often by women and older slaves who are no longer strong enough for the underground work. They pound the ore with heavy stone tools, their hands raw and bleeding. The resulting powder is then taken to washing tables. Here, more slaves use water to separate the heavier, silver-bearing particles from the lighter rock. It is meticulous, back-breaking work performed under the hot Greek sun. The water, often scarce, becomes a gray, sludgy mess, contaminated with lead. Finally, the concentrated powder is taken to the smelting furnaces. This was perhaps the most dangerous job of all. Slaves had to tend the fires, which reached temperatures of over 1000 degrees Celsius. They would tip the ore into the furnace and add lead to help separate the silver. The process released poisonous fumes, especially lead oxide, which the workers breathed in constantly. Lead poisoning would slowly destroy their bodies, causing nerve damage, excruciating pain, and madness. From this fiery, toxic process, a stream of pure, liquid silver would finally emerge. It was a beautiful, shining metal born from the ugliest of human cruelties. That gleaming silver, fight through so much pain, was immediately put to work building Athenian power. The raw bullion was transported to the state mint in Athens. There, it was melted down and stamped into the city's famous coins, the owls. These coins, bearing the image of the goddess Athena on one side and her sacred owl on the other, became the most trusted and stable currency in the entire Greek world. They were more than just money. They were a symbol of Athenian reliability and dominance. With these coins, Athens could buy whatever it needed, from grain in the Black Sea to timber for its ships from Macedon. The owls funded everything. The most critical use of this silver was the creation of a navy. In the early 5th century BC, a politician named Themistocles persuaded the Athenian assembly to use a massive new silver strike at Laurion, not for a cash handout to citizens, but to build a fleet of 200 warships known as triremes. This was a pivotal moment in history. These ships were the cutting edge of military technology. They were long, sleek vessels powered by 170 rowers, designed for speed and ramming enemy ships. And it was this fleet, funded by Laurion's silver, that crushed the Persian navy at the Battle of Salamis in 480 BC, saving Greece from invasion. After the Persian Wars, the silver continued to flow, and the fleet continued to grow. Athens established the Delian League, an alliance of Greek city-states meant to defend against future Persian threats. But Athens quickly turned this league into its own empire. Allies who tried to leave were brutally suppressed by the Athenian navy. The yearly tribute they were forced to pay to Athens was collected and stored on the Acropolis. This wealth, combined with the endless silver from the mines, funded the city's golden age. It paid for the construction of the Parthenon and other magnificent temples on the Acropolis, projects that employed thousands of free craftsmen and laborers. The silver also funded democracy itself. It paid for the salaries of public officials, ensuring that poor citizens could afford to leave their work and participate in government. It paid for jurors, for the city guard, and for the maintenance of public buildings. In essence, the silver from Laurion acted as a subsidy for the entire democratic system. It created a virtuous cycle for the Athenian citizen. The mines funded the navy secured the empire brought in tribute, and this combined wealth paid citizens to participate in the democracy that oversaw it all. But this cycle was only virtuous for those on top. For the slaves in the mines, it was a death spiral. As we look back at the glory of Athens, we must confront an uncomfortable truth. The democracy we admire, the philosophy we study, and the art we cherish were all built on a system of brutal exploitation. The freedom of the Athenian citizen was directly dependent on the enslavement of others. The eloquent debates in the assembly were made possible by the silent suffering in the mines. The Parthenon, that shining symbol of human achievement, is also a monument to the thousands of forgotten souls who were sacrificed to pay for it. Their misery was the price of Athens' greatness. This does not mean we should dismiss Athenian achievements. The invention of democracy was a radical and profound step forward for humanity. The idea that ordinary people, not just kings or aristocrats, should have power over their own lives is a legacy that we still fight for today. Athenian thinkers asked fundamental questions about justice, ethics, and the nature of society that continue to shape our world. But we cannot separate these achievements from the dark foundation on which they stood. To do so would be to tell only half the story, a sanitized and dishonest version of the past. The story of Laurion forces us to ask difficult questions about our own societies. We cherish our freedoms and our comforts, but do we ever stop to think about the hidden costs? In a globalized world, the products we enjoy often come from complex supply chains that can conceal exploitation and suffering far from our sight. The cheap clothes we wear, the technology we use, the food we eat, their affordability can sometimes come at a great human and environmental price. The story of Athens is a powerful reminder that prosperity and freedom in one part of the world can be linked to hardship and oppression in another. Ultimately, the legacy of Athens is a dual one. It is a source of inspiration and a stark warning. It inspires us with the radical potential of democracy and human intellect. But it warns us that justice and freedom are never simple. It teaches us that societies can hold noble ideals while committing terrible injustices. The shining city of Athens and the dark mines of Laurion are two sides of the same coin. Acknowledging the darkness does not diminish the light. Instead, it gives us a truer, more complete, and far more human picture of the past, and challenges us to build a better, more just future.